The winter of 1486 descended upon the Russian lands like a curse from the old gods. Snow fell in relentless sheets, burying the villages beneath blankets of white that seemed to have no end. In the province of Novgorod, where the forests grew so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground even in summer, the cold was a living thing, a beast that devoured the weak and tested the strong. Elena Volkova had known nothing but hardship in her 22 years of life. She was the daughter of a blacksmith, a man whose hands had once shaped iron with the strength of 10 men, but now lay motionless in their small wooden cottage, his body ravaged by a fever that no village healer could cure. The sickness had come suddenly, striking him down in the prime of his life, leaving Elena alone to shoulder the weight of their survival. The medicine he needed was expensive, imported herbs from Constantinople, rare potions that only the wealthy could afford. Elena had sold everything they owned, her mother's silver cross, her grandmother's wool shawl, even the tools of her father's trade. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. So she had done the unthinkable. She had walked through the frozen forest, her feet wrapped in cloth because she'd sold her winter boots, and presented herself at the gates of the Volkov estate. The manor house rose from the snow like a fortress of stone and timber, its towers reaching toward the gray sky. Smoke curled from a dozen chimneys, and through the frosted windows, she could see the warm glow of fires that never went out. Lord Dmitri Volkov was the master of these lands, a warrior who had earned his title through blood and steel. They said he had killed 20 men in single combat during the Tatar raids. They said his heart was as cold as the winter itself, that he showed mercy to no one. But Elena didn't care about rumors. She cared only that the Volkovs needed servants for their household. And servants received wages. The head housekeeper, a stern woman named Elena, had looked Elena up and down with disapproving eyes. The girl was too thin, her dress patched and faded, her hands rough from work. But there was something in Elena's gaze, a fierce determination, a refusal to break, that made Elena pause. "Can you serve at table?" Elena had asked in a voice like winter wind through bare branches. "Yes, ma'am," Elena had lied. She had never served nobility in her life, but she would learn. She had to. And so Elena found herself working in the great hall of the Volkov estate, serving wine and roasted meats to nobles who spent more on a single meal than her father had earned in a year. The work was brutal, 16 hours a day, her feet aching, her back screaming in protest, but every copper coin she earned went toward her father's medicine, toward keeping him alive for one more day, one more week. She had been working at the estate for 3 months, when Lord Dmitri Volkov returned from the wars. Elena had never seen him before that bitter December evening. She had only heard the stories whispered by the other servants, how he had led his men through impossible odds, how he never smiled, how his dark eyes could freeze a man's soul. When he rode through the gates on his black stallion, snow clinging to his fur cloak, Elena watched from the kitchen window. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face angular and harsh, with a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. He moved like a predator, controlled, dangerous, aware of everything around him. That night, there was to be a great feast to celebrate his return and to announce his engagement to Lady Katerina Orlova, daughter of the powerful Orlov family. The marriage would unite 2 of the greatest houses in Novgorod, creating an alliance that would make them untouchable. Elena was assigned to serve in the hall during the feast, her hands trembling as she carried platters of food through the crowd of nobles dressed in furs and jewels. And that was when everything changed, when she descended the stone steps into the wine cellar and heard voices speaking of murder and betrayal. The wine cellar beneath the Volkov manor was carved from ancient stone, its walls lined with barrels and bottles that had been aging for decades. Torches flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows that seemed alive in the dim light. Elena had been sent down to retrieve a particular vintage, a wine from the southern provinces that Lord Dmitri had specifically requested for the toast. She moved carefully between the rows of barrels, her breath forming white clouds in the cold air. Even here, beneath the earth, winter's grip was absolute. Her fingers were numb as she searched for the bottle Elena had described, her mind focused on not making a mistake that could cost her this precious employment. That's when she heard the voices, 2 women, speaking in hushed tones near the far corner of the cellar. Elena froze, her hand still reaching for a wine bottle. She should have announced her presence, should have made her footsteps louder, but something in the tone of those voices made her blood run cold. "He suspects nothing." The first voice was smooth, cultured, Lady Katerina Orlova. Lord Dmitri's betrothed. Elena had served her earlier in the evening, had seen her smile at Dmitri with what seemed like genuine affection. Nothing at all. The second voice was older, raspier. Elena didn't recognize it. He believes you love him, that this marriage is a blessing. The fool. And Alexei, is he in position? Katerina's voice dropped even lower. Your lover arrives tonight, my lady. He waits in the East Tower with 3 of his best men. When Lord Dmitri rises to make the toast, when all eyes are upon him, Alexei will strike. An arrow through the heart, quick and clean. Elena's hand trembled, nearly knocking a bottle from its shelf. An arrow. An assassination. During the feast, her mind reeled with the implications. And after, Katerina asked, what of witnesses? The guards have been paid. They will claim it was an attack by bandits. In the chaos, Alexei will disappear into the night. Within a week, you will be the grieving widow. And when the mourning period ends, you will marry Alexei as planned. The Volkov lands will be yours. And through you, they will belong to the true heir. Dmitri's half-brother, Katerina said with satisfaction. Alexei should have inherited these lands, not that bastard son of a peasant mother. My marriage to Dmitri was only ever meant to be temporary, a key to unlock the door before we dispose of the lock. The cruelty in her voice made Elena's stomach turn. She pressed herself against the cold stone wall, praying they wouldn't see her in the shadows. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain they would hear it. The toast will be in 1 hour, the older woman said. Make sure he drinks deep. The wine has been drugged. Not enough to kill, but enough to slow his reflexes. When the arrow comes, he won't be able to dodge. Footsteps echoed on the stone floor. The women were leaving. Elena remained frozen, counting her own heartbeats until she was certain they were gone. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. She had to warn him. Lord Dmitri Volkov might be cold and distant, might be a warrior who inspired fear in his enemies, but he didn't deserve to be murdered by the woman who smiled at him with lies on her lips. No one deserved that kind of betrayal, but who would believe a peasant girl? If she went to the guards, they might be part of the conspiracy. If she caused a scene, they would simply kill her along with Dmitri. She needed to be smart, careful, invisible. Elena's eyes fell on a piece of parchment left on a nearby barrel, probably from an inventory count. Her hand moved on instinct, grabbing the charcoal stick used for marking barrels. With trembling fingers, she wrote 7 words in her rough script. Your bride betrays you. Arrow at the toast. She folded the parchment small enough to conceal in her palm, grabbed the wine bottle she'd been sent for, and climbed the stairs back to the great hall on shaking legs. The feast was in full celebration. The hall blazed with firelight from 2 massive hearths. Tables groaned under the weight of roasted venison, honeyed bread, and winter vegetables. Nobles laughed and drank, their faces flushed with warmth and wine. Musicians played in the corner, their instruments creating a melody that seemed to belong to a world where betrayal and murder didn't exist. Lord Dmitri sat at the head table, Lady Katerina at his right hand. She leaned close to him, whispering something that made him nod, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She played her part perfectly, the loving bride-to-be, the future lady of the manor. Elena approached with the wine bottle, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. Every step felt like walking toward her own execution. She was about to interfere in the affairs of nobles, about to accuse the future lady of the house of conspiracy and murder. If she was wrong, if this was somehow a misunderstanding, she would be hanged before sunrise. But she had heard what she had heard, and she could not stand by and watch a man die. My lord, she said softly, her voice barely carrying over the noise of the feast. The wine you requested. Dmitri turned to look at her, and Elena felt the full weight of his gaze. His eyes were dark as a winter night, sharp and assessing. He looked at her as if he could see straight through to her soul, as if he could read every secret she carried. For a moment, Elena forgot how to breathe. She poured the wine into his silver goblet with hands that trembled just slightly. And then, as she set the bottle down, she did something that could either save his life or end hers. She pressed the folded parchment into his palm, her fingers brushing against his for just as Dmitri Volkov's eyes scanned the parchment beneath the table, his expression never changing. Years of warfare had taught him to control every muscle in his face, to never reveal weakness or surprise to his enemies. But Elena saw it. The slight tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers curled around the note, the flash of something dangerous in those dark eyes. He lifted his gaze to meet hers, and in that moment, Elena saw the predator wake. This was not the nobleman sitting at a feast. This was the warrior who had survived 20 duels, who had led men through impossible battles. This was death incarnate, wrapped in fine clothes and cold fury. "Katerina, my love?" Dmitri said, his voice carrying across the hall with practiced ease. "I believe it is time for the toast." Elena's blood turned to ice. No, it was too soon. The toast wasn't supposed to happen for another hour. What was he doing? Katerina's smile faltered for just a heartbeat. "Now, my lord." "But we haven't finished the feast." "Now." The single word cut through her protest like a blade through silk. Dmitri stood, and the hall gradually fell silent. All eyes turned to their lord. Elena's gaze darted to the east tower windows, where she could just make out a shadow moving behind the glass. Alexei. The assassin was already in position. "My friends," Dmitri began, raising his goblet. "Tonight, we celebrate not just my return, but the promise of new beginnings." The window shattered. Elena saw the arrow before her mind could process what was happening. It flew through the air with deadly precision, aimed directly at Dmitri's heart. Time seemed to slow as the projectile cut through torchlight and shadow, but Dmitri was already moving. He dropped like a stone, the arrow passing through the space where his chest had been a heartbeat before. It embedded itself in the wooden chair behind him, with a solid thunk that echoed through the suddenly silent hall. Then chaos erupted. Screams filled the air as nobles scrambled from their seats. Guards shouted, drawing swords. More arrows flew through the broken window, 3, 4, 5 of them, turning the feast into a battlefield. One struck a nobleman in the shoulder. Another hit a servant carrying a tray, and she fell with a cry that was lost in the pandemonium. Dmitri grabbed Elena's wrist in an iron grip. "You," he growled. "With me. Now." He pulled her away from the table as another arrow whistled past where she'd been standing. Elena stumbled, her legs tangling in her servant's dress, but Dmitri's grip kept her upright. He moved through the chaos like he was born to it, pulling her behind him as he made for the side entrance. "The guards!" Katerina's voice rose above the screams. "Kill him! Kill them both!" So it was true. The guards were part of it. Elena saw them now, turning their weapons not on the assassins, but on their own lord. 6 men, their faces grim with purpose, blocking the main doors. Dmitri changed direction instantly, hauling Elena toward the kitchens. They burst through the heavy wooden doors into a world of heat and smoke. Cooks and servants scattered as their lord ran through, still gripping the peasant girl's wrist. "The stables," Dmitri commanded to someone. Elena couldn't see who through her panic. "Have Thunder saddled. Now!" They crashed through the back door into the winter night. The cold hit Elena like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. She'd left her shawl inside, and her thin servant's dress was no protection against the bitter wind. Snow swirled around them, turning the world into a white blur. Behind them, she could hear shouting. The guards were coming. The stables loomed ahead, and a young boy was already leading out a massive black stallion, the same horse Dmitri had ridden in on earlier. The beast snorted clouds of vapor into the freezing air, its eyes rolling white as it sensed the danger. "Up," Dmitri commanded, and before Elena could protest, he'd lifted her bodily onto the horse's back. The ground seemed impossibly far away. She'd never ridden a horse in her life. Peasants walked or rode in carts. Dmitri swung up behind her with fluid grace, one arm wrapping around her waist to hold her in place. His body was solid and warm against her back, the only source of heat in the frozen world. "Hold on," he said against her ear. And then they were moving. The stallion exploded into motion with power that terrified Elena. She grabbed the horse's mane with both hands, pressing back against Dmitri's chest as they galloped through the estate gates. The guards shouted behind them, and she heard the whistle of arrows cutting through the air. One grazed Dmitri's shoulder. She felt him flinch, felt the warm splash of blood on her neck, but he didn't slow. He urged the horse faster, leaning low over Elena's head as they raced into the forest beyond the estate. The trees closed around them like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The path, if it could be called a path, was treacherous with ice and hidden roots beneath the snow. The horse's hooves thundered against the frozen ground, the sound echoing through the darkness. "Why did you warn me?" Dmitri's voice came rough in her ear, his breath warm against her frozen skin. "I heard them," Elena gasped, her teeth chattering. "In the wine cellar, Lady Katerina and another woman. They spoke of murder, of your half-brother Alexei. I have no brother named Alexei, your half-brother. They said he should have inherited, that you're the son of a peasant. My mother was a peasant." Dmitri's voice went cold as the winter air. "A weaver's daughter my father loved enough to marry despite his family's protests. When she died birthing me, my father's brother, my uncle Alexei, claimed I had no right to the Volkov name. My father exiled him 20 years ago. The pieces clicked together in Elena's mind. He's returned. He and Katerina planned this together. The marriage was just a way to get close to you. And you overheard this plot and warned a man you've never spoken to before. There was something in his voice she couldn't identify. Why? Why risk your life for a lord you don't know? Because letting someone die when I could prevent it felt worse than the risk of trying. The words hung in the frozen air between them. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit were fading. The forest was too dense, too dark for the guards to follow safely at speed. But Elena knew they weren't safe. Not yet. They rode for what felt like hours through the endless forest. Elena's body went numb with cold, her fingers frozen in the horse's mane. She couldn't feel her feet at all. Her breath came in short gasps that turned to ice crystals in the air. Just when she thought she would freeze to death in the saddle, the trees opened up before them. A fortress rose from the mountainside. Smaller than the Volkov estate, but infinitely more defensible. It was built of dark stone, its walls thick and solid, with narrow windows that looked like watchful eyes. "My hunting lodge," Dmitri said. "No one knows about this place except my most trusted men." They clattered into the courtyard, and servants rushed out despite the late hour. Dmitri dismounted in one fluid motion, then reached up for Elena. When his hands closed around her waist to lift her down, her legs buckled. She couldn't feel them, couldn't make them work. Without hesitation, Dmitri swept her into his arms, carrying her like she weighed nothing. Elena was too cold, too exhausted to protest. She let her head fall against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the thick fabric of his coat. "Prepare the guest chamber," Dmitri commanded as he strode into the lodge. "Have fires built in every hearth. Bring furs, hot water, and food." Art beat. Elena woke to warmth, a sensation so foreign after the frozen nightmare of the previous night that for a moment she thought she'd died and gone to whatever afterlife awaited peasant girls who interfered in noble affairs. But the ache in her muscles, the burning sensation in her frost-bitten fingers and toes, told her she was very much alive. She opened her eyes to find herself in a chamber unlike anything she'd ever seen. The bed beneath her was piled high with fur blankets, bear, wolf, fox, their combined weight pressing down on her like a warm embrace. A fire roared in the stone hearth, filling the room with dancing light and blessed heat. The walls were rough-hewn timber, and through a small window, she could see morning light reflecting off endless snow. "You're awake," Dmitri's voice came from the shadows near the door. Elena sat up quickly, pulling the furs around her, and realized with horror that she was wearing only her undergarments. Her servant's dress was gone, along with her frozen stockings and worn shoes. "Your clothes were soaked through," Dmitri said, reading her expression. "My servants dressed you in dry things and put you to bed. You were half frozen. Another hour in the cold, and you would have lost your fingers and toes to frostbite." He stepped into the firelight, and Elena saw that he too had changed. Gone were the fine feast clothes, replaced by simple wool trousers and a thick tunic. His shoulder was bandaged where the arrow had grazed him, but he moved without any sign of pain. In his hands, he held a tray with bread, cheese, and steaming broth. "Eat," he commanded, setting the tray on a small table beside the bed. "You need to regain your strength." Elena's stomach growled at the sight of food, but she didn't move. "My father, I need to get back to the village. He needs his medicine, and I haven't paid this month's wages to the healer." "Your father is being cared for." The words stopped her cold. "What?" Dmitri moved to the window, his back to her as he looked out at the winter landscape. "James, the blacksmith from the village of Volkova, suffered a fever 3 months ago that left him bedridden. His daughter sold everything she owned trying to pay for healers and medicine, then came to work at my estate to earn wages for his care." Elena's heart hammered in her chest. "How do you know?" "I make it my business to know everything that happens on my lands." He turned to face her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Yeah, when you came to the estate seeking work, Irina reported it to me, a peasant girl, desperate enough to lie about her experience, willing to work 16 hours a day without complaint. I was curious, so I investigated." "You've been watching me?" The thought sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with cold. "I've been ensuring your father received proper care." Dmitri crossed his arms over his chest. "The village healer is competent for treating common ailments, but your father's fever required more. I sent my own physician to examine him. I paid for the imported medicines from Constantinople. I made sure he had proper food, clean blankets, and constant attention." Elena stared at him, her mind reeling. Why would you do that for a peasant you've never met?" Because his daughter works for me, and I protect what is mine. The possessiveness in his voice made her skin prickle. Your father's debt to the healer has been paid. His treatment will continue regardless of whether you work another day in your life. This I swear to you. Tears burned Elena's eyes. Tears of relief, gratitude, and something darker, fear. Perhaps, because nothing came without a price in this world. Especially not the generosity of powerful men. What do you want from me? She whispered. Dmitri was silent for a long moment, his gaze holding hers across the chamber. The truth. You saved my life last night. But I need to know. Was it truly chance that you were in that wine cellar at the exact moment Katerina revealed her plot? Or are you part of some deeper game? The accusation stung like a slap. You think I'm a spy? That I deliberately... I think that in my world, coincidences don't exist. I think that you appeared at my estate 3 months ago, exactly when Katerina was laying her trap. I think you were in the wine cellar at the perfect moment to overhear plans that would have otherwise succeeded. And I think that either you're the luckiest woman in Russia, or you're working for someone who wants me to owe them a debt. Elena threw back the furs and stood, ignoring the way the cold air bit at her exposed skin. I am a blacksmith's daughter who was desperate to save her father. That is all. I took work at your estate because it was the only way to earn enough money for his medicine. I went to the wine cellar because I was ordered to fetch a bottle. And I warned you because... Her voice broke. Because I've watched my father dying for 3 months, and I couldn't bear to watch another person die when I had the power to prevent it. She moved toward him, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. If you believe I'm part of some conspiracy, then kill me now. But know that you'll be killing someone whose only crime was trying to do the right thing. They stood inches apart, her chest heaving with emotion, his face carved from stone. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. The suspicion didn't disappear entirely, but it eased, replaced by something that might have been respect. You have courage, he said softly. Foolish, perhaps, but genuine. I believe you, Elena Volkova, and that presents me with a problem. What problem? You're not safe. He gestured toward the window, toward the world beyond. Katerina knows you warned me. By now, she and my uncle will have spread word that you're a traitor to their cause. If you return to the village, they'll kill you. If you try to run, they'll hunt you down. The only place you're safe is here, under my protection. The implication settled over Elena like a weight. You're saying I'm a prisoner. I'm saying you're under my protection, whether you want to be or not. Dmitri moved to the door. This lodge is remote and defensible. My men here are loyal. They've served my family for generations. You'll be safe here while I deal with Katerina and my uncle. After that, he paused. After that, we'll discuss what comes next. And if I want to leave now, he looked back at her, and his eyes were hard. Then I'll have my men stop you. Not because I'm cruel, Elena, but because I won't have your death on my conscience. You saved my life. The least I can do is save yours in return. The door closed behind him, and Elena heard the unmistakable sound of a lock clicking into place. She was a prisoner after all. The days that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Elena was given the run of the lodge, a sprawling structure built into the mountainside with thick stone walls and narrow windows designed for defense rather than comfort. She could move freely through the halls, eat in the kitchen with the servants, even walk in the inner courtyard, but the outer gates remained locked, and guards watched her with polite but unyielding attention. Her father's condition improved daily. Dmitri made sure she received reports from his physician. The fever had broken, and though James remained weak, he was conscious and eating solid food. The relief Elena felt was tempered by the knowledge that she couldn't see him, couldn't hold his hand or hear his voice. On the 4th morning of her captivity, Dmitri found her in the courtyard, staring at the locked gates with undisguised longing. Come with me, he said without preamble. He led her through the lodge to a large room she hadn't seen before. It was clearly a training hall. The floor was covered in straw mats, and the walls were lined with weapons, swords, axes, spears, and in one corner, a collection of bows and arrows. If you're going to survive in my world, Dmitri said, selecting a small bow from the rack, you need to know how to defend yourself. Elena stared at him. You want to teach me to fight? I want to teach you to survive. He held out the bow. Take it. The wood was smooth under her fingers, the bow lighter than she'd expected. Elena had seen hunters in the village, had watched them bring down deer and wild boar, but she'd never held a weapon in her life. Your stance is wrong, Dmitri said, moving behind her. His hands settled on her hips, adjusting her position, feet shoulder-width apart, Bend your knees slightly. His touch was firm, but not rough. And Elena found herself hyper-aware of his proximity. He smelled of leather and pine smoke, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body in the cold training hall. Now, he continued, his chest nearly touching her back as he reached around to adjust her grip on the bow. Hold it like this. Your dominant hand pulls the string. Your other hand guides the bow. He placed an arrow in her hands, showing her how to nock it properly. Then his hands covered hers, guiding her through the motion of drawing the string back. Breathe, he murmured against her ear. The shot comes on the exhale. Don't think. Just feel. Elena released the string. The arrow flew wild, missing the target by several feet and clattering against the stone wall. Again, they practiced for hours. Dmitri was patient, but demanding, correcting her stance, her grip, her breathing. Gradually, Elena's shots began to find their mark. Not the center, not yet, but at least she was hitting the target. 2 weeks passed in the mountain lodge, and Elena felt herself changing. Her hands, once soft from serving wine, had developed calluses from holding the bow. Her aim had improved dramatically. She could now hit the center of the target more often than not. But it wasn't just her body that was transforming. Something deeper was shifting inside her, something she couldn't quite name. It was during one of their training sessions that Dmitri finally spoke of his plans. They're holding a wedding, he said, lowering his sword after a particularly intense sparring match. He'd begun teaching Elena basic blade work, claiming that knowing only archery wasn't enough. 3 weeks from now, at the Orlov estate, Katerina and my uncle Alexei are making their union official. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, breathing hard. A wedding? After they tried to kill you? They believe they succeeded. Dmitri's smile was cold as winter frost. My men have spread rumors throughout the region. Lord Dmitri Volkov perished in the attack on his feast, killed by unknown assassins. His body was never recovered, lost in the forest during the escape. The official story is that bandits struck during the celebration, and Katerina plays the grieving widow-to-be, while simultaneously announcing her engagement to my uncle. Yes, it's bold. I'll give them that. They're claiming the marriage will unite the Volkov and Orlov estates, bringing stability after the tragedy. His jaw clenched. They're stealing everything my father built, everything my mother died to protect. Elena set down her practice sword, studying Dmitri's face in the flickering torchlight. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd learned to read the subtle signs of his emotions, the way his eyes darkened when he was angry, the slight tension in his shoulders when he was planning something dangerous. You're going to the wedding, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to destroy it. He turned to face her fully. I have allies still, men who served my father, families who remember my mother's kindness. They've been gathering intelligence, preparing. The wedding will be attended by every noble family in the region. Witnesses everywhere. It's the perfect stage for exposing the truth. They'll have guards, assassins. They'll be expecting retaliation. They'll be expecting an army at their gates, not a ghost walking through their front door. Dmitri moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the small training hall. I'll attend as a guest, disguised. Someone they won't recognize until it's too late. Elena's heart began to race. And not from the exertion of training. That's suicide. Even disguised. Someone might recognize you, your voice, your movements, the way you carry yourself. That's why I need you. The words hung in the air between them. Elena stared at him, comprehension dawning slowly. Katerina barely looked at you that night at the feast, Dmitri continued. To her, you were invisible, just another servant. But you heard her voice. You know her mannerisms. You can identify her co-conspirators. And most importantly, if I arrive with a woman on my arm, playing the role of a foreign nobleman and his young wife, it provides the perfect cover. You want me to pretend to be your wife? I want you to help me bring justice to the people who tried to murder me, and who would have killed you without a second thought. His hand reached out, cupping her chin gently. Elena, I'm not ordering you to do this. You've already saved my life once. You owe me nothing. But if you choose to help me, I'll do it. The words came out before she could think them through, but even as she said them, Elena knew they were true. These past 2 weeks, she'd felt more alive than she had in years. The grief and desperation that had defined her existence since her father's illness had been replaced by something fiercer, something that burned hot in her chest whenever Dmitri looked at her with those dark, knowing eyes. You understand the danger? Dmitri asked, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a gesture that made her breath catch. If we're discovered, they'll kill us both. Slowly, painfully, as an example to anyone else who might oppose them. I understand. Elena met his gaze without flinching. But I also understand that my father is alive because you protected him. That I've learned to defend myself because you taught me. That for the first time in my life, I have the power to fight back against people who believe peasants like me don't matter. So yes, I'll help you. Not because I owe you a debt, but because it's right. Something shifted in Dmitri's expression, the cold warrior's mask cracking just slightly to reveal the man beneath. He leaned forward, and for a heartbeat, Elena thought he might kiss her. Her lips parted in anticipation, her body swaying toward his, but instead, he pressed his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her face. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most foolish. Can't I be both? His laugh was low and genuine, a sound she'd never heard from him before. It transformed his face, making him look younger, almost vulnerable. Yes, I suppose you can be both. They stood like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air. Then Dmitri stepped back, and the warrior returned. We have 3 weeks to prepare, he said, his voice businesslike once more. You'll need proper training in court manners, how to walk, how to talk, how to eat like a noble woman. We'll create a backstory that's believable, and you'll need to learn to dance. Dance? There will be dancing at the wedding. It would be suspicious if we refused to participate. A hint of amusement flickered in his eyes. Unless you already know how. Elena thought of the village festivals, the simple folk dances she'd seen but never participated in because she'd always been working, always focused on earning money for her father's care. I've never danced in my life. Then I'll teach you. Dmitri extended his hand, palm up in invitation. I consider this your first lesson. There was no music, only the sound of the fire crackling in the hearth and the distant howl of winter wind outside. But when Elena placed her hand in his, when his other hand settled at her waist and pulled her close, she heard a melody anyway, something ancient and wild, like the forest itself was singing. Dmitri guided her through the basic steps, his movements fluid despite his size. Nobles dance differently than peasants, he explained. Every movement is controlled, measured. It's not about joy or celebration. It's about displaying grace, status, power. Elena stumbled over her own feet, stepping on his toes. Sorry, don't apologize. Just feel the rhythm. Trust me to lead you. She tried to relax into his guidance, following the pressure of his hand at her waist, the gentle pull of his fingers interlaced with hers. Gradually, the steps began to make sense. They moved through the training hall in a slow circle, and Elena found herself forgetting the purpose of the lesson, losing herself instead in the sensation of his body so close to hers, the heat of his palm burning through the thin fabric of her training tunic. Better, Dmitri murmured, his lips close to her ear. And you're a natural, or you're a good teacher. That too. The dance slowed, then stopped, but neither of them stepped apart. Elena looked up into Dmitri's face and saw her own desire reflected there, the wanting, the fear, the knowledge that they were standing on the edge of something that could destroy them both. Dmitri, she began. Don't. His hand came up to cradle her face. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Not yet. Not until after the wedding, when we know if we're going to survive this. The Orlov estate blazed with torchlight and celebration. Elena's hands trembled as she adjusted the heavy velvet cloak around her shoulders, watching the procession of nobles arriving in their finest carriages. She barely recognized herself in the polished silver mirror. Her hair was elaborately braided and adorned with pearls. Her dress was deep burgundy silk that whispered against her skin with every movement, and around her neck hung a necklace of rubies that Dmitri said had belonged to his mother. You look like a boyar's wife, Dmitri said from behind her. He too was transformed. His beard was trimmed differently, his hair darkened with dye, and he wore the colors of a noble family from the distant eastern provinces. Colored glass changed his distinctive dark eyes to a lighter brown. They'll never recognize the peasant girl who served them wine. And if they do, Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Then we fight our way out. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. But they won't. Trust in the disguise. Trust in yourself. You've trained for this. They entered the great hall arm in arm, and Elena forced herself to breathe slowly, to walk with the measured grace Dmitri had taught her over the past 3 weeks. The hall was magnificent. Hundreds of candles cast golden light over tables laden with roasted meats, fresh bread, and winter fruits that must have cost a fortune. Musicians played in the gallery above, their instruments creating a melody that seemed to mock the violence that had brought this celebration into being. And there, at the head table, sat Katerina Orlova in a gown of pure white, looking every inch the blushing bride. Beside her was Alexei Volkov, older than Dmitri by perhaps 15 years, with the same strong features but twisted by bitterness and greed. His hand rested possessively on Katerina's arm as he surveyed his stolen kingdom. Lord Konstantin Romanov and his wife Irina, from the province of Kazan, the herald announced as they approached the receiving line. It was the identity Dmitri's allies had created, complete with forged documents and paid servants ready to vouch for their authenticity. Katerina's eyes swept over Elena with the same dismissive glance she'd given 100 servants. No recognition, no suspicion. To her, Elena was just another noble wife, slightly awkward in her finery, unworthy of attention. "Welcome," Katerina said with a practiced smile. "We're honored by your presence from such a distant province." "The honor is ours," Dmitri replied in Russian, tinged with an Eastern accent he'd practiced until it was perfect. "We've heard tales of the Volkov-Orlov union. Such a tragedy about Lord Dmitri's death, but how fortunate that love has bloomed from sorrow." Something flickered in Katerina's eyes. Triumph, perhaps, or cruel amusement. "Yes, fortunate indeed. My dear Alexei has been such a comfort in these dark times." Elena wanted to drive a knife through the woman's lying heart. Instead, she smiled sweetly and moved on, her hand still firmly in Dmitri's grip. They took their seats at a table near the center of the hall, close enough to be seen, far enough to not draw immediate attention. Elena watched as more guests arrived, as the hall filled with the very people who should have been mourning Dmitri's death, but instead celebrated his murder. "The priest will arrive soon to perform the ceremony," Dmitri murmured, his lips barely moving. "That's when we act. My men are positioned throughout the estate, 3 in the gallery, 2 at the main doors, 4 in the kitchens. When I give the signal, they'll secure all exits." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "And the signal, you'll know it when you see it." The feast continued. Elena picked at her food, unable to eat, despite the rumbling in her stomach. Dmitri ate with apparent enjoyment, playing his role perfectly, the Eastern lord enjoying the finest hospitality Novgorod had to offer. Finally, as the sun began to set beyond the windows, a priest entered the hall. He was young and nervous, clearly uncomfortable with the rushed nature of this wedding. Elena wondered what threats or bribes had convinced him to participate in this mockery. "My lords and ladies," Alexei stood, raising his goblet. "The time has come to make official what tragedy has necessitated. Lady Katerina has done me the honor of accepting my hand, and together we shall unite the Volkov and Orlov estates into a power that will endure for generations." Applause rippled through the hall. Elena felt sick. The priest began the ceremony, his voice shaking slightly as he recited the ancient words. Katerina and Alexei stood before him, their hands joined, their faces the picture of noble dignity. "If any person here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony," the priest intoned, "let them speak now, or forever hold their peace." The silence stretched. Elena held her breath. Then Dmitri stood. "I have reason." His voice rang out clear and strong, the Eastern accent gone, replaced by the unmistakable authority of the true Lord Volkov. "This marriage is built on murder and lies." The hall erupted into chaos. Guests leapt to their feet, shouting in confusion. Guards reached for their weapons. Katerina's face went white as fresh snow, and Dmitri reached up, removing the colored glass from his eyes, wiping the dye from a strand of his hair. "Hello, uncle? Did you miss me?" Alexei's hand went to the sword at his belt, but he was too slow. Dmitri's men were already moving, weapons drawn, blocking the exits as planned. In the gallery, 3 archers appeared, their arrows trained on Alexei and Katerina. "You're dead," Alexei snarled. "We saw you fall. You saw what I wanted you to see." Dmitri strode toward the head table, and the crowd parted before him like water. "A servant girl warned me of your treachery. While you were congratulating yourselves on a successful assassination, I was gathering evidence, gathering allies, waiting for exactly this moment." He turned to address the assembled nobles. "Lord Alexei Volkov was exiled by my father 20 years ago for theft and betrayal. He should have no claim to the Volkov name or lands, yet here he stands, attempting to steal through marriage what he could not earn through honor. And Lady Katerina Orlova conspired with him. She was his lover long before she agreed to marry me. The betrothal was a sham, designed solely to get close enough to murder me." "Lies," Katerina shrieked. "He's a ghost, a demon. I have witnesses." Dmitri cut her off. He gestured, and Elena found herself standing, moving to his side. "This woman heard you planning my death in the wine cellar of my own estate. She heard you speak of archers, of timing, of drugged wine. She saved my life when she had every reason to let me die." Katerina's eyes finally focused on Elena, and recognition dawned. "You, the serving girl. I should have killed you in that basement when I had the chance." The admission rang through the silent hall like a bell. Several nobles gasped, others reached for weapons, though whether to defend Dmitri or attack him, Elena couldn't tell. "So you admit it," Dmitri said softly. "You admit to conspiracy, to attempted murder, to treason against your own betrothed." "I admit nothing." Alexei drew his sword at last. "You're a bastard son of a peasant whore. These lands should have been mine from the beginning. I only took what was rightfully—" He never finished the sentence. Dmitri moved with the speed of a striking snake, his own blade suddenly in his hand. Steel clashed against steel, and the nobles scrambled back, clearing space for the duel. The duel was brief and brutal. Alexei fought with the desperation of a man who had everything to lose, his blade whistling through the air in wild, powerful strikes. But Dmitri fought with the precision of a warrior who had survived 20 duels, who had led men through impossible battles, who had been training for combat since he could walk. Their swords clashed again and again, the sound of steel on steel ringing through the silent hall. Elena watched with her heart in her throat as Dmitri parried, countered, advanced. Alexei stumbled backward, his breathing labored, sweat pouring down his face despite the winter cold. "You were always weak," Dmitri said, his voice calm despite the violence. "Father saw it. Mother saw it. That's why you were never truly accepted into the family, no matter how much you claimed your birthright." "I am the eldest son," Alexei roared, lunging forward with renewed fury. Dmitri sidestepped the attack with fluid grace, and his blade found its mark. The sword pierced through Alexei's shoulder, not a killing blow, but a crippling one. Alexei's weapon clattered to the floor as he fell to his knees, clutching the wound. "You are a traitor and a murderer," Dmitri said, standing over his uncle, "and the penalty for treason is death. But I won't kill you today. Instead, you'll face trial before the assembled nobles of Novgorod. You'll have the chance to defend yourself, to speak your truth. That's more mercy than you showed me." He turned to Katerina, who had been inching toward a side door. Two of Dmitri's men blocked her path, their weapons drawn. "And you, Lady Katerina, you played your role well, the loving bride, the innocent victim, but your own words condemn you. The servants will testify to what they heard in that wine cellar. The evidence of your conspiracy will be laid before the church and the crown." Katerina's mask finally cracked, her beautiful face twisted with rage and hatred. "You think you've won? You're still the bastard son of a peasant. This marriage would have legitimized the Volkov line, would have brought true noble blood. My mother's blood was worth more than all your family's titles combined." Dmitri's voice was ice and iron. "She had honor, courage, kindness, everything you'll never possess, no matter how many jewels you wear or how many lies you tell." He gestured to his men. "Take them both to the dungeons. Separate cells. Guard them well until the trial." As Alexei and Katerina were dragged away, one bleeding, one screaming curses, Dmitri addressed the assembled nobles. "My lords and ladies, I apologize for disrupting this celebration, but I could not allow a marriage built on murder and deception to proceed. The Volkov estates remain under my stewardship, as my father intended. Any who served my uncle or Lady Katerina believing their false stories, you have my understanding. Those who knowingly participated in the conspiracy will be tried alongside them." A murmur ran through the crowd. Then, one by one, the nobles began to kneel. It started with the older families, those who had served Dmitri's father, and spread through the hall like a wave. Within moments, everyone was bowing before the rightful Lord Volkov. Everyone except Elena. She stood at his side, and when Dmitri turned to look at her, she saw exhaustion and relief warring in his dark eyes. "It's over," he said softly. "Just for her. You're safe now. We're safe," she corrected, taking his hand. "We did this together." The journey back to the hunting lodge took 3 days through winter storms. Elena rode beside Dmitri now, on her own horse, a beautiful mare he'd given her, saying that the woman who saved his life deserved better than riding pillion like a child. The symbolism wasn't lost on Elena. She was no longer the peasant servant, no longer the protected prisoner. She was something else now, something neither of them had words for yet. When they arrived, Elena's father was waiting in the courtyard. James Volkov stood on his own feet for the first time in months, leaning heavily on a wooden cane but upright and alive. His face, once gaunt and gray, had color in the cheeks. His eyes, once clouded with fever, were clear and bright. "Papa!" Elena leaped from her horse before it had fully stopped. Running to embrace him, she buried her face in his shoulder and wept. For all the fear, all the pain, all the impossible choices that had brought them to this moment. "My little girl," James murmured, his arms strong around her. "The physicians told me everything, how you worked yourself to exhaustion for me, how you risked your life." He looked past her to where Dmitri stood, watching them with an unreadable expression, and how Lord Volkov protected us both. Dmitri approached slowly, almost cautiously. "Master James, I'm glad to see you recovered, my lord." James bowed as deeply as his weakened body would allow. "I owe you a debt I can never repay. My life, my daughter's life, everything. You owe me nothing." Dmitri's hand found Elena's shoulder, a gesture of possession and protection that sent warmth flooding through her. "Your daughter saved my life first. Any debt has been paid in full." That night, after her father had been settled in his rooms and the household had quieted for sleep, Elena found Dmitri in the library. He sat before the fire, staring into the flames with a goblet of wine in his hand, still wearing the travel-stained clothes from their journey. "You're still awake," she said from the doorway. He looked up, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I couldn't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that moment in the hall. Alexei drawing his sword, Katerina reaching for you. 100 things that could have gone wrong." Elena crossed the room and knelt beside his chair, but they didn't go wrong. "We survived. We won. You could have died." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "If any part of the plan had failed, if someone had recognized us too soon, if the guards hadn't been where they were supposed to be, but I didn't die. I'm here." She turned her face to press a kiss into his palm. "And I'm here because you taught me to be strong, to fight, to survive." Elena, her name was a prayer and a plea. "These past weeks, having you here, teaching you, watching you transform from a frightened peasant girl into a warrior." He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I never believed I could have this. Someone who sees past the title and the violence to the man beneath. Someone who chose me not because they had to, but because they wanted to." "I do want you," Elena whispered. "Not Lord Volkov, not the warrior or the noble. Just you, Dmitri." He pulled her up into his lap, and his kiss was everything the dance had promised. Fierce and claiming, tender and desperate, full of everything they'd been holding back for weeks. Elena melted into him, her hands tangling in his hair, her body fitting against his like they'd been designed to match. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dmitri rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said, "not for politics or alliances or land. Marry me because you saved my life, and I can't imagine spending another day without you. Marry me because you're brave and fierce and you make me believe I can be something more than my father's weapon." Elena's eyes filled with tears, happy ones, for once. "I'm a blacksmith's daughter. The nobles will never accept. My mother was a weaver's daughter, and my father married her despite his family's protests. Our children will carry peasant blood from both sides, and they'll be better for it." His hand settled at the small of her back, pulling her closer. "Say yes, Elena, please." "Yes," the word came out choked with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you.